Okay, let's talk about Michael Burry. We all know him, right? The investing genius from The Big Short who saw the 2008 financial crisis coming when pretty much no one else did. But what if I told you that the guy who beat the entire system just walked away? So in late 2025, he drops this really cryptic message online, and then he does the unthinkable. He just folds his hand. On November 10th, 2025, it's official. He terminates the registration for his legendary hedge fund, Scion Asset Management, and tells his investors he's returning all their money. So the question is, why? Why would he do that? Well, we're going to dig in and uncover the clues behind this absolutely shocking move. All right, first things first. Let's start with the central mystery here, the shutdown itself. $700 million. Just let that number sink in. That is what Burry's famous bet against the subprime mortgage market earned for his clients. And for himself, a cool $100 million. I mean, this one single move is what cemented him as a legend. Now, for the first and maybe the most public clue behind his decision, it's a stark warning he's been sounding about the market's latest obsession. He's basically saying he's seen this movie before and he doesn't like the ending. He's drawing a direct line from that dot-com crash in the early 2000s right to the AI frenzy that's happening today. And what's really fascinating is how specific he gets. He's directly comparing today's AI powerhouse, NVIDIA, to Cisco. Now, you might remember Cisco was the absolute darling of the dot-com boom, right up until the moment it all came crashing down. And this wasn't just talk, not by a long shot. He put his money where his mouth was. Regulatory filings showed that his fund was holding a massive short position against both NVIDIA and Palantir. We're talking about a $1 billion bet that the prices of these AI darlings were about to fall hard. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. To really understand why he closed his fund, we have to look at a clue that not as many people are talking about, a regulatory squeeze that was basically changing the entire game for hedge funds. You know, timing is everything, right? Well, get this. The SEC adopted this huge new set of rules for private funds back in August 2023, and the final deadlines for funds like Scion to comply, they hit right around the time Burry made his move. Coincidence? And the pressure from these new regulations was just immense. It wasn't just a little extra paperwork. This stuff dramatically increased the compliance burden, requiring incredibly invasive quarterly reports, mandatory and very expensive audits, and a whole bunch of new restrictions on how managers could even operate. And here is the real kicker. Burry said it himself. He flat out stated that these new rules were a primary reason for shutting everything down. His exact word was muzzled. He felt like he couldn't speak freely anymore about what he was seeing in the market. So you've got this regulatory pressure cooker, and then on top of it, there's this intense public debate going on about his credibility. It really helps you understand why he might want to change up his entire strategy. On the one hand, you have absolute giants like Warren Buffett, who praised his foresight, even comparing him to the mythological prophet Cassandra. You know, the one who was cursed to tell the future but have nobody believe her? But then you go online and it's a totally different story. Forums are just filled with skepticism. You've got tons of traders calling him a perma-bear, basically saying he just got lucky that one time. And this sentiment really gets to the heart of the criticism, right? The idea that if you're constantly predicting a crash, you're bound to be right eventually. You can imagine how that would make it tough to get your warnings heard. So, when you put all these clues together, the AI bubble warning, the regulatory chains, and this whole public debate, his final move, it starts to look less like quitting and more like a brand new strategy. And in a brilliant nod to that compliment from Buffett, Burry actually named his new venture after Cassandra, the ultimate misunderstood prophet, cursed to see the future but never ever be believed. See, he wasn't quitting. He was changing the battlefield. By closing the fund, he was no longer a professional money manager, which means he was no longer subject to all those restrictive SEC rules. He was free. So it all boils down to this 4-step playbook. He traded the regulatory chains for a subscription paywall. This lets him get his warnings about the AI bubble directly out to an audience of over 35,000 subscribers, completely, as he puts it, unchained. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. Now that he's free from the regulators, Burry is betting his entire legacy not on a trade, but on his ability to convince the world that he sees another disaster coming. Only time's going to tell if anyone is listening this time around.